Dr. Hiren Gohai, eminent intellectual and public figure, political activist from Assam. Professor Apurva Borua, retired professor from Northeast Hills University. Comrade Sitaram Yechuri, General Secretary, CPIM. Professor Yogendra Yadav, who doesn't need any introduction, social and political activist and part of Swaraj Abhiyan and various other social movements, and who has also been professor at Nidhi CSDS. We are hoping that Senior Advocate Colin Gonzalez will shortly join us. He is on his way. We regret that Kuldip Nair is not able to join us because of little ill health. So we will continue with our meeting. I would request Dr. Hiren Gohai to introduce the matter. It will be more in terms of the speakers initiating the discussion and not likely a speech that is going to happen, and we hope that interaction will take place. Thank you.
Distinguished members, guests, distinguished guests on the dais, and esteemed members of the discussion of the issue. The discussion we should like to initiate should not really be such a controversial affair as it turned out to be during the press conference. We are here to state certain facts which are little known outside the NaRC. And we want to lobby for an enlightened, conscious opinion on a matter that has been hanging fire and disturbing the peace in Assam, and also stability necessary for development. So I would like to read out something I have prepared, if you don't mind. Listening to a written speech is sometimes boring. I request you to hear it. It will be idle to pretend the question of drawing up a national register of citizens in Assam is a purely legal and constitutional matter, though it certainly has such a dimension. It is at bottom a political issue. The crux of the matter is whether we settle for a democratic solution to a problem that might have serious communal repercussions through understanding and conciliation, or ram down unwilling throats a fascistic dictator. We have got to be careful and realize that on the one side, there are legitimate anxieties and fears of the indigenous people that they might be reduced to a marginalized group or groups in near future. On the other side, we have lakhs of terror-stricken and hapless immigrants or their descendants who face the insults and indignities from fascistic outfits with or without connivance of the government, and who have been living in a kind of limbo for decades. A carefully and fairly prepared NRC may bring peace and stability to a region intermittently shaken by civil unrest, strife and bloody massacres on this issue. One wishes it had been prepared by an authority immune to pressure from governments that are politically motivated. But the monitoring of the Supreme Court reassures one that such pressures may be resisted given goodwill. It is also an urgent necessity to ensure that the process does not hang fire on some trifling pretext, some quibble or other. Any such delay will have unpredictable consequences and plunge the region into violence and chaos. It is an issue on which devolves whether Hindus and Muslims and other communities are to live in peace and amity, or in India, or are to be locked in perpetual ruinous distrust and conflict. Two snags that have recently come to light are causing much misunderstanding, heartburn, and acrimony. First is the sudden surfacing of the possibility that some of those enlisted in the NRC may be categorized as original inhabitants, deserving some kind of superior status. Such a categorization, people of immigrant Muslim origin fear, may leave them vulnerable to some future discrimination. Certain organizations of indigenous people, on the other hand, claim that it is an insurance against any probable attempt in future to dominate them. The Honorable Supreme Court's order, dated August 24, 2017, had presumably prompted the move to identify the original inhabitants OI of the state in accordance with Clause 3 of the Schedule to the Citizenship Rules 2003, registration of citizens and issue of national identity cards. Yes. Please don't mind if I seem to sort of stutter a bit. You know, being an old man, I have to use ventures, which give trouble to me while speaking. Then there is the widespread panic caused by the Honorable Guwahati High Court's ruling that the linkage certificate showing relationships with parents and siblings of women migrating from their parents' home because of marriage, issued by the Secretary of the Gaon Panchayat in the place where they are married, may not be considered a valid public document, as Section 19 of the Panchayat Act of 1994 did not mention it among functions of the Gaon Panchayat Secretary. This is the argument of the Guwahati High Court. Since such records are not maintained in the Gaon Panchayat, its secretary is not in a position on the interpretation of the High Court to issue such a certificate. As many as 27 lakh women, most of them married, suddenly begin to feel insecure. There appears to be some uncertainty as to whether they are to be regarded as suspected aliens or citizens whose citizenship claims are yet to be established. Coupled with the argument on original inhabitants, this predicament conjures before them the prospect of rejection, eviction from the country and its normal life. Now it seems that Clause 3 of the Citizenship Rules of 2003, applicable to the Indian Citizenship Act of 1955, does not specifically direct the category of original inhabitants be set apart among those entitled to citizenship. It only enjoins upon people involved in preparation of the NRC to ascertain whether a person belongs among those who have been originally living in the state. Perhaps at the time of framing the rules, such an eventuality did not occur to the authorities concerned. In fact, in a letter to the coordinator of the NaRC project in Assam, the Registrar General of India wrote in 2015 that this term cannot be defined, but verification teams have been directed to categorize a person either as original inhabitant or doubtful voter or an alien. In the absence of a clear definition, it is not clear how the verification teams are to proceed in this matter. Further, when the advocates pleaded before the Supreme Court that millions of tea garden labour in Assam who lack permanent land rights or any other official documents but have been living there for 100 years or more, were going to be imperiled owing to this categorization, the Honorable Supreme Court granted that they may be entitled to this OI status. In that case, one wonders why children of immigrants who have lived in Assam for an equally long period should be denied that status. Likewise, the reasoning that the linkage certificate issued by Government Panchayat Secretary on the legacy data of a married woman from his or her village may not be a valid public document of the same status as a certificate from a school board or a district administration is open to the same kind of contestation. The fact remains that though the section 19 of the Gaon Panchayat Act 1994 does not confer such a function on the Secretary of the GP, Gaon Panchayat, section 20 of the Act leaves room for any other function the government may assign to it. And the Registrar General of India had accepted this cabinet decision enabling the Gaon Panchayat secretaries to issue such a certificate. Again, before it is finally accepted as a supporting document, it has to be attested by the circle officer or the BDO after checking the legacy data. Since the government has not amended the decision and it cannot do so post facto, the Gaon Panchayat Secretary's certificate may not perhaps be called in question. A related point that requires sympathetic attention is that owing to the great difficulty in acquiring official documents in our country, which at times upsets even well-off and educated sections and the mental hazards between the common man and the government officials in India, common people usually seek the help of known middlemen to procure such certificates. And the middlemen in their greed at times fob off fake documents on the suspecting client, sometimes in collusion with office employees. Hence the virulent claim from some quarters that discovery of numerous fake certificates proving the alien origin of such applicants beyond doubt is a premature conclusion. Many such applicants may be able to produce authentic legacy data given time. What has alarmed the descendants of immigrant Muslims is the fact that the press reports suggested that the coordinator of the NaRC project would submit a list of original inhabitants along with another list of people whose antecedents have not been established. Since people categorized as deep voters or doubtful voters have faced untold harassment for years together, apart from their anxiety, there was widespread apprehension that among people that 30 lakhs among them are going to meet a similar fate. Later, the coordinator issued a clarification to state that there will be no separate list of original natives, only of people whose citizenship has been established and those whose claims are yet to be settled. But the damage has been done, and there are now petitions before the Supreme Court seeking a clear direction on this point. It is particularly worrisome that there are as many as 1,23 lakh people whose legacy data are yet to be verified. And yet, the coordinator shows some eagerness to reveal that large numbers of people are lacking in valid proof of citizenship. It was probably unwise. Besides, the coordinator's plea that publication of the list might cause serious law and order problems in minority inhabited areas, and the noisy haste with which the central and the state governments rushed security forces to such areas certainly compounded the worry among the minority. Before I end, it may be appropriate to clarify for those in the audience who are mystified by the NaRC and the magic date of 25 March 1971 for determination of citizenship. In the decades before independence, there was a massive influx of poor Muslim peasants of eastern Bengal, reduced to wretched penury by zamindari oppression under permanent settlement imposed by the colonial authorities. So much so that in some districts of Assam, from 2 to 3% Muslim population, it increased to 20 to 25% in a couple of decades. And some areas became preponderantly Muslim. The British promoted this migration to avoid grave civil unrest in eastern Bengal, but it also aroused serious apprehensions among the indigenous people who thought their very existence as national or tribal entities were at stake. The communal turn politics was taking at the time before independence made the situation worse. In the last election before independence, it was a major issue in Assam. The sudden advent of independence and the drastic partition of the country took place without any concern for the hapless people caught in the historical bind. Some people in Assam thought that the Muslims from East Bengal should return to their homes in Pakistan, as Hindu refugees had also started arriving in Assam. In certain outlying areas, immigrant Muslims were even driven across the frontier. Many of them came back only after Nehru-Liaquat Pact of 1957, 10 years after independence, and maybe a little more longer. Yet, already in 1951, a national register of citizens was prepared at the behest of the state government, apparently without official sanction by the center. However, since the NaRC was painstakingly prepared on the basis of enumeration slips of the census, it was a fairly exhaustive document, and copies were preserved in administrative centers like sub-divisional and district headquarters, as well as in local offices of the Congress party, which was at that time the ruling party. Later on, perhaps because of lack of interest of the center, these records fell into disuse and neglect, and they were not updated as they should have been. Wear and tear severely damaged or even destroyed some of them. Following the Assam anti-foreigner movement 1979 and 1985, which came to a close with acceptance of 25 March 1971 as the cut-off date for citizenship in Assam. There were both periodic witch hunting by chauvinists and bitter resistance by the minorities, as no proper method for establishing genuine citizenship had been adopted. Tensions and acrimonious disputes and stray cases of violence frayed tempers, disturbed peace, and created a general atmosphere of unity until the late 90s, when the leaders of the minority declared with one voice that they were ready to accept this date as cut-off date for the determination of citizenship. That was also the time when a consensus evolved on the imperative need to update the NaRC of 1951 in the light of other evidence and later developments. The Assam Accord of 1985 had provided that the voter rolls of 1961 and 1971 would be acceptable as supplementary proof of citizenship, as some people may have been accidentally left out of NaRC 1951, and some, as already indicated, have been wrongfully expelled by misguided mobs. Further, the updated NaRC would make no distinction on the basis of caste, creed, or religion. Hence, though far from being a perfect document, in view of the circumstances of its origin and evolution, it can be a firm guarantee of social peace, stability, and harmonious development in the state. There are forces that are inimical to the establishment of such social peace, particularly chauvinists of various hues. The danger from the failure of this enterprise or from disruption to the process of its preparation may be caused from such events as the massacre of 2,000 Muslims in Delhi in 1983, under the misapprehension that they were all foreigners who had sneaked into Assam. Since then, there have been other slaughters of up to 100 people or more in Western Assam. There are also uninformed opinions outside Assam that NaRC is part of a large-scale program of expulsion of Muslims. Now the BJP government is adding fat to the fire by proposing that the supposed Muslim threat be balanced by a massive infusion of Hindu population from Bangladesh and other countries in Assam. This has again provoked anger and outrage among indigenous people in Assam. It's a duty on the part of civil society organizations and eminent citizens with a public image to dispel their doubts and help in successful completion of the NaRC project. And I also think that responsible political parties are also duty-bound to support this project and enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gulai. I would now request Comrade Kechudi to come and address the dais. So he will go first because he has to leave after this. So if you have any conversations with him, maybe you should take it just after he speaks.
Thank you very much. Professor Hiren Gohen, Gurinder Yadav, Professor Urban, and very distinguished members in the audience. Only on behalf of the Communist Party of India Marxists, I will only say that we fully endorse what Professor Goyen has said here, and he explained the position. There is no need for me to repeat it further. I think there are essentially four major points that I would like to make. In the atmosphere that is there in the country and the political situation that is evolved and continues to evolve in our country, the question of gaining political mileage or advantage by dividing the people is something that my party has been consistently opposed to and we steadfastly remain opposed to. The question of the citizenship register, the NaRC, was an issue on which the Supreme Court has given very definite guidelines, and it has said that the NaRC process must be completed on the basis of those guidelines. The first point I'd like to make is that this is something that has to be adhered to scrupulously. There cannot be any deviation from the guidelines that have been put forward suggested by the Supreme Court. Secondly, there has been a vexed problem always on these matters, that is on the question of the bona fide of the legal documents that are provided. And particularly for women, this has been a specific problem that we've seen this in the past as well. So the panchayat level, legal panchayat level documents must be accepted as a legal documentation, which also the Supreme Court says. And that should be the basis on which this list should be completed. Third, that the cut-off date of 25th March 1971, which after long years of both agitation, struggles and finally agreement, is an agreed date. And in accordance with this date, everybody who's been established as a citizen of India and therefore resident of Assam, this should be the date by which this process should get the deadline on basis of which this register should be prepared. And finally, I think this process needs to be completed as soon as possible. 31st of December 2017 was the date that has been suggested. If that can happen, that will be the best, because longer you allow this process to linger, greater are the potentialities for conflict situations to arise. So these are the 4 points that on behalf of the CPI I'd like to make. And we'd like to only assure you, Professor Hiren Goyal, since you ended your written text with an appeal to all responsible political parties, I'd say that without pretensions of saying that we are responsible or irresponsible, but not only political parties, I think all well-minded individuals and people's movements who are in the active with the central focus is to strengthen our secular democratic foundations of the Indian Constitution. All of us will have to work together to ensure that a new laboratory is not created in the Northeast. That can only, by those who wish to thrive by spreading this tensions, fissures and clashes between different religious communities. Now that is something we all have to be wary of. We already have too many things on our hand. Only you had again one more Gaurakshak, so-called Gaurakshak going and killing another, a farmer, but a Muslim farmer who was buying cows. That's happened today. Irrespective of the Supreme Court guidelines, that action must be taken. So there are various other issues on which many of us will have to come together again, like demanding a central ban on all these private armies. No state government can do that. It has to be a central ban on all the Gaurakshaks and moral policing forces that are going around as the self-declared implementers of law today. But be that as it may, we'd only like to say that with this 4 points that I've made, I assure you on behalf of the CPI our complete support to this movement, and we'll do all that we can to ensure by 31st December this process is scrupulously adhered to on the basis of the Supreme Court guidelines and it is completed. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade. Now I invite Professor Apurva Barua, retired professor from Nehru, Northeast Wales University.
Well, friends, after what Dr. Buhai has told you about the entire issue, its background, and the demands that we are now trying to make, it does not make much sense to give a long speech. But I am here to clarify something. which I thought should have been clarified during the press briefing itself. Now, if a matter of updating of the NRC is being carried out under the supervision of the Supreme Court, what are we doing here today? We understand as responsible, law-abiding citizens of this country that a process which is sub judice cannot be in any way interfered with by any other force except by law or officials of law. Our focus is not merely legal, it is political. Because NRC has become a political weapon in Assam. On both sides of this conflict, there are two different communities and most reactionaries of them. That's why during the press briefing also I was trying to say this, that the issue here is not merely Hindu and Muslim. The issue here is who should be and how should one be identified as a citizen of India. Dr. Guhai has given a very good description of what is happening. I want to draw your attention to two things. Number one, that ever since the Assam movement, all governments have promised that will implement the Assam Accord, including the All Assam Gana Sangram Parishad, which was actually an offshoot of the All Assam Student Union and All Assam Gana Sangram Parishad, that movement which shook India for 6 years. One of the major, most important movements of the world. See, from then on, various governments have promised, they have not done it. Now, does it imply there are some people who are trying to say now that now look, we are doing it? One must understand, no government can take credit for the process of updating of the NRC in Assam. It is primarily because of judicial intervention that this has taken place. There are cases which were filed, organizations have gone to Supreme Court demanding upgradation of the NRC. And people like Professor Guhai and us, we have been saying that if you do not do it, there will be communal test and it will continue and people will be able to make use of that. We saw that since 1971 as accepted as the cut-off year by most people in Assam, that we demand that the updation or updating of the NRC should take place on the basis of that cut-off year, there will be probably a permanent solution to the question of illegal migration to Assam. I must draw your attention to the fact that here was a small community which felt threatened that it will be swamped by migration from outside. I have no hesitation to tell you, I'll take half a minute to explain this, that originally Assam movement was not against only immigration, illegal immigration from Bangladesh. The fear was that Assamese community, which was a community based mostly on linguistic and cultural basis, had no religious foundation. That community thought that their own homeland will be taken over, opportunities will be taken over by others, and they will govern by others. When they were saying others, the word the All Assam Gana Sangram Parishad initially used was Bahira Gata, whoever has come from outside. Don't think they are not afraid of that even today. When you have a situation where you apply for a job of a dhobi in the railway and you find somebody from outside Assam has to come and do that. That's why there are a whole lot of them doing up this happening now, recently. People do obviously get scared. Some of us have proved in 1980s with facts and figures in journals like Economic and Political Review and Frontier that in small jobs, petty trade, we as people, indigenous people of Assam, were feeling a threat. That is how the whole thing became a major issue. And now we hope that if we settle this date, probably this conflict will go, the competition will still be there, but yet the people, the small community of the Assamese will be reassured. But then, despite Supreme Court supervision, what has happened is, there is a major attempt at derailing the whole process of updating and therefore solving the problem of migration to Assam, immigration to Assam, and illegal immigration into Assam. There was an amendment to the Citizenship Act of India proposed in 216. In 216, an amendment to the Citizenship Act of India was proposed. That for the first time told the people of Assam that see, the NaRC upgradation may not be very easy. What did this particular amendment try to do? Well, it tried to include people who do not belong to a particular religion as citizens of India, openly boundaries of India to them. In a sense, this was a very subversive attempt at destroying the peace and communal harmony in Assam. That was the time when intellectuals and social activists like us started campaigning for the NaRC. We demanded NaRC must be updated quickly and the guidelines of the Supreme Court must be followed. The other thing is, it's very interesting that a case is there in the Supreme Court. You cannot do anything, government cannot do anything. But the government can do something else. Government can give you an opportunity to file a revision petition one after another, hundreds of revision petitions. If you do that, then the process, the judicial process, gets completely derailed. Now, the point that has been made about the Panchayat certificate, I just want to make one small clarification. Guwahati High Court gave the judgment in the context of one woman whose identity was determined whether she was a foreign national or an Indian national. There she was submitting a Panchayat certificate and the Supreme Court said it's a private document, therefore cannot be entertained by the judiciary. In law, there are quite a few lawyers here. There are differences between the private and public document. In the case of private document, what you have to do is, you have to submit it and validate it. How can you validate it? The person who issued it must come before the court and say very clearly, yes, I believe this is right, and this is in my knowledge, and I am certified this. Now, when you have 27 lakhs people using such a document, and you say, after all, we are not declaring it illegal, we are only saying that the document should have to be validated, what will happen? 27 lakhs appearances by the Panchayat secretaries in the court. How long will it take? The intention is to completely derail, prevent the process of NaRC updating, and continue to take advantage of the communal tensions that might emerge in Assam. Therefore, we are saying that since Supreme Court has originally said that the Panchayat document, because the form which we have to fill up for NaRC, application forms, had the Panchayat certificate mentioned there. Now, you cannot change it. The Supreme Court has already approved it, but there are petitions before the court about this, and we don't know what positions we will take. What we are trying to do here is, as I am fond of saying, that law merely regulates, politics governs. We are only trying to impress upon the enlightened sections that the political forces of the country must be forced to accept what was accepted in the Assam Accord, because it was a treaty between the agitators and the government of India. And secondly, that since this kind of documents, in the case of the married woman, Panchayat documents, Panchayat secretary certificates, were included in the original application form of the NaRC, that should not be tinkered with. Because, please remember, lawyers should be directed by their clients. And the clients in this case are political parties and some political organizations. So, our purpose is not try to influence the judicial process. Our purpose is to develop, to mobilize and inform public opinion, because of which political forces will be forced to accept this. That is all I need to tell you. I don't think we need to explain anything else, because Dr. Guwahati has very clearly stated everything. Last thing, my friends, it's an appeal to all of you. Please do not allow that part of the country, Assam, to get into a situation of communal strife. If you do that, It is a threat not only to us, the Assamese and the residents of Assam, but to the state of India. It is a very sensitive region and there will be a security threat to the state of India. We must therefore remember that and do our bit. Thank you.
Now I
will bound to issue a small clarification to Professor Baruah, very sensible, passionately rational, and well-argued comment. It is that the support for preparation of NaRC, updating the NaRC, actually came much before 2016. 2016, of course, set everybody on edge because the proposed amendment by the BJP government was that non-Muslim citizens, basically, from neighboring countries, mainly Hindu of course, will be allowed to become citizens of India without any hassle. And people in Assam, we are frightened because many leaders, provincial leaders of the BJP, state leaders of BJP, said in public that there will be Bangladeshi Hindus who will be settled in Assam. They said it. A powerful minister, Himanta Biswa Sarma, the president of the BJP, state BJP, Ranjit Das, they said also, what is the harm of being settled Hindus in Assam, in large numbers? That was the apprehension of the Assamese, that this would actually reduce them to a minority after, not only a minority, but a marginalized minority. And this is a very openly expressed apprehension that I am stating before.
Thank you. Another issue of concern amidst all this discussion is that recently a minister from Bangladesh had visited Assam, and he clearly said that till date neither the government of Assam nor India has taken any initiative to establish any kinds of talks with Bangladesh. Whereas the entire politics of Assam since half a century has been concentrating on the issue of immigration and infiltration. So we need to be very, very aware of this fact that the governments are not in a process of any negotiations. What will happen subsequently if the NaRC is updated and there are many people who are not now citizens of India, nor is Bangladesh willing to take them in. So we also need to consider that aspect. Now I invite Professor Yogendra Yadav, and after that we can have a round of discussion. Mr. Colin Gonzalez will join us at 4:15.
Friends, it's an honor to speak on this subject in the presence of two persons who I have over the years read and learned from in thinking about Assam in particular and Northeast in general. Professor Hiren Gohain and Professor Apurva Baruah. Professor Baruah I can claim to be a friend. Professor Gohain I cannot claim to be a friend, but someone I've been deeply inspired by and have learned a lot over the last. Your writings in EPW, sir, have been a source of education for, not just for me, I think for people of my generation in thinking about these complex matters. And what you said today more or less completes what any sensible person or sensible politics should say about it. But now that I have an opportunity, let me speak about it from the angle of someone who is not so familiar with the specifics that you mentioned, but from a broader angle. To me, what we are discussing is not about Assam. It's not about this legal bureaucratic exercise called National Register of Citizens. It is not about the law being, the specific law being considered, still being considered by the Indian Parliament, called Amendment to the Citizenship Act of 1955. It is certainly not about the specific details of what are the powers of Gram Panchayat in Assam. What we are discussing today, as Professor Gohain rightly pointed out right in the beginning, it is not a legal bureaucratic exercise. It's a political issue that we are discussing. I would only push it further and say it's political in the deepest possible sense of the term. What we are discussing is not Assam. What we are discussing is the idea of India. What does it mean to be Indian is what is at stake here in what's happening in Assam right now. And that is why it is a question that should concern every Indian. It's a question that should concern anyone who has any stakes in the future of this country. I will probably go on to say towards the end that it has implications far beyond India, and not just to Bangladesh, but to something much general that we should talk about. The idea of what it means to be Indian was very fiercely debated in the decades prior to India's independence. And very crudely put, we had, towards India's freedom, we had two views about what it means to be an Indian. One view, which was expressed in the form of what we today call the two-nation theory, which said your Indianness, that your citizenship of a nation state depended on what religion you profess. Interestingly, this was not a new idea. I would like to argue that this idea actually has direct origins in Europe. This was actually an authentic European idea, where either in terms of religion, there was less of religion in Europe, but to define nationality in terms of ethnic origins is something which comes straight from European history. And in a sense, you could say, I'm not a historian, I can see many distinguished historians here, but allow me these broad sweeps, because political scientists don't know very much. And once they become politicians, they need to know even less. So allow me these very broad sweeps. The history of Europe in the last 500 years is a history of trying to make the cultural map coincide with the political map, to coincide the linguistic ethnic map with the political map. And this has been a disastrous exercise, because what it would require is either streamrolling the ethnic cultural boundaries to say you must become German in a proper sense, you must be French in a proper sense, if not, I'll do this and that to you, or to throw you out and do what else. Or it means serious realignment of political boundaries. Because if the two boundaries have to match, either the ethnic boundaries have to shift, homogenization has to take place, or political boundaries have to shift, nation states have to be redefined. This has been a disastrous experience in human history, especially in the 20th century. So the two-nation theory, in a sense, drew upon that European experience. So both Mr. Jinnah and the RSS Walas are actually true descendants of European thinking about how nations should be defined. As opposed to that was the dominant thinking of our freedom struggle. Our freedom struggle said, no, that's not how we define a nation. It insisted on a definition of India, which is a definition that draws from descent if you happen to live here. But above all, if you share an imagination, it's an open definition of nationhood, of a kind that that very few countries had seen before. It's a very political definition. It's not an ethnic definition. It's not a religious definition. It's not a linguistic cultural definition. So, the freedom struggle believed, and much of the learning of freedom struggle was encapsulated by the Constituent Assembly. It said you would not define Indian citizenship in terms of race, ethnicity, language, religion. No, that's out. We thought the debate was settled once and for all in the Constituent Assembly. But what is happening right now is that that debate is being reopened. And to me, what's happening in Assam right now is a replay of a two-nation theory. And that's why what's happening in Assam right now must concern every Indian. I should mention quickly that the moment we talk about nation state, there are some constraints that we must admit and must learn to live with. One, no nation state in the world can ever have open boundaries. I do hope that one day humanity would grow beyond nation states, where we would not need boundaries. But as long as we have entities of nation states, there are boundaries. And boundaries have unfortunate consequences. Boundaries have exclusions built into it. This is something some of us tend to forget in our liberal moments, in our generous moments, in our humane moments. We tend to forget that there is a certain minimum logic of nation states. So citizenship has to be defined, and some exclusions are built into that. It is unfortunate, but it's true. Second, nation states go by formal logic of legal documents. Legal documents can never capture the reality, sometimes very tragically so. But that's what you need to live with. These are two very, very limiting things that we have to operate with. Now, what is so tragic about what's happening in Assam right now, and why every Indian must take deep interest in this question, is that this basic consensus of the freedom struggle, encapsulated by Constituent Assembly of India, and articulated in documents like the Citizenship Act of 1955, that is being challenged. There is such a determined onslaught on that idea from two sources. There are two kinds of onslaught right now from the communal forces. One, through the amendments to the Citizenship Act of 1955 that was noted by the speakers, not sufficiently articulated because it's not yet become a reality. It's still being discussed. But I think there is insufficient recognition in the country, and I really think many of us must talk more and more about it. For the first time in the history of this country, a religious definition of Indian citizenship is being offered. What does that amendment do? Basically, maybe all of you know about it, and my apologies for wasting your time if everyone is familiar. Basically, what that amendment does is the following. It says that foreign citizens who wish to become Indian citizens would be allowed if they come from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal. Does it mention Pakistan? I don't remember. And Pakistan. So from these four countries they would be allowed, provided they are Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain. I don't think it mentions Christians. Christian also, but Christians. Full stop. Now, what does it mean? I think it's a very simple, it can be summarized in 3 words. No Muslims please. Thank you. For the first time in the history of this country, no Muslims please doctrine is being advocated. Now, this is as serious an onslaught on the Republic of India and the very idea of India that anyone can imagine. I've been saying, many of us have been saying, that what underlies this regime is not their hostility to Pakistan. I don't think Mr. Modi is very hostile to Pakistan. I think they are deeply envious of Pakistan. They want to create a Hindu Pakistan. That's what is being attempted here. So that's the one onslaught that's happening. The second onslaught, very ably and very correctly defined by Professor Gohain and everyone else, is the manner in which NRC is now being sought to be tweaked below the radar of the Supreme Court. It's been tweaked through two mechanisms. One, by creating this weird category of original residents, which is nowhere there in Indian constitution, in law, it doesn't exist. That category is being created. And secondly, by this very clever, devious administrative ploy of disallowing certificates issued by Panchayat. Since Professor Gohain has spoken so eloquently about it, I don't need to talk more. All I wish to say is that please remember, we are not discussing the powers of Panchayat in Assam. We are discussing the idea of India. And every such thing has to be interpreted in the light of that overall objective that we are talking. So there is this twofold attack on the communal onslaught. But I would be failing in my duty if I do not mention another thing that not all of us would wish to hear, which is that this onslaught has been made possible by a gross failure of secular politics. This we must remember. It takes me back to my student days. This is 1981. Some of our colleagues had organized a cycle yatra to Guwahati. You would know. Sunil had taken up that yatra, cycle yatra to Guwahati, in support of Assam movement. And I remember all our progressive radical friends poo-pooed it. They thought Assam movement was so regressive movement. They thought it was not just counter-revolutionary, it was just chauvinist ethnic movement. What it did, and I wish to place it on record, even though this is not the most important topic today, but I think we must learn to speak the full truth. The fact is that the anxieties of an ordinary Assamese were not adequately acknowledged by radical secular politics. This is a historic fact that we must remember. A very empty and vacuous notion of cosmopolitanism made it seem as if, so what's the matter? What's the matter if a few people come? You know, what was happening was that this cultural composition of certain parts of India were being changed so rapidly, and that to the disadvantage of people who have been living there for centuries. This anxiety was not recognized, let alone addressed. We do know that Professor Gohain mentioned it, how the ethnic religious composition of many parts of Assam changed. I should add to that how it changed in Bengal as well. How the ethnic composition, the communal composition of some parts of Bengal has changed dramatically over the last 40, 50 years. And please remember, this is the cannon fodder for BJP's rise both in Bengal and in Assam. Because all they need to do is to show you statistics. These are true statistics about what is happening. So, I think secular politics failed miserably in recognizing the fact that there were genuine anxieties of the Assamese, not of the Hindus. It failed in addressing the immigration that was taking place. Much of it was illegal, should have been stopped by any nation state. Far from that, it actually surreptitiously encouraged it. That actually happened. And as a result of which, what was a legitimate regional anxiety turns into a communal movement. This has happened in many parts of the country. If you look at Maharashtrawadi Gomantak Party in Goa, which was actually a straightforward regional movement with no communal overtones whatsoever. It finally merged into the BJP after 30-40 years because of a failure of secular politics. So to my mind, we should find, if we are to seriously respond to it today, we must of course make the points that operationally I would endorse for what Professor Gohain has said. Very happy to note that Comrade Sitaram usually also endorsed all those points, which is what it should be done. Which is to say, we should not merely speak about not bringing in provisions that discriminate against legitimate migrants from Bangladesh. But we should also equally insist on the NaRC exercise being carried out. It should be carried out. It should be legitimately carried out. And the government in the last 32 years, which failed to get it done even after Assam Accord, must be held responsible. And please remember, most of these governments were so-called secular governments. They must be held responsible for this very gross failure to do an exercise. Finally, just one more point. I said right in the beginning that it's not about Assam, it's about the idea of India. I want to end by saying that it's not merely about the idea of India, it's about something even bigger. I think the idea of nation state, which originated in Europe and which was bought by the rest of the world and became the dominant ideology of the 20th century, has proven to be an idea which has led to more bloodshed in this world than human bonding. That idea needs to be changed by a different idea. This constant search for matching of political boundaries with ethnic boundaries must stop. We must learn to live. The idea that nation state must be culturally homogeneous has to be given up. We must think of nations which inhabit deep cultural diversity. I wish to argue that India was actually the first country in the world which made it possible for us, for humanity to think about changing the idea of nation state. That we can have nation states which invite, inhabit, and accept, and welcome, and celebrate deep diversity. And what is true of India is more true of Assam. I keep saying that the single state of Assam has more diversity built into it than probably the whole of Europe put together. So what is at stake in Assam is not only the idea called India, it is the very idea that nations can be built with deep cultural diversity. So it should concern everyone living in Assam, it should concern everyone living in India, it should concern every citizen of this world. Thank you.
Professor Yadav. Now it's open for discussion. I see that there are many eminent personalities in the gathering. So if I hesitate to take individual names, but if there is anyone who would like to come and comment or participate in the discussion, you're welcome. We have also Mr. Zafarul Islam Khan of Delhi Minority Commission. We have Comrade Viratpur Vasu. We have eminent senior journalist and writer Mr. Puranjay Guha Thakurta, Professor Apurvanand of Delhi University, and Dr. Suneelam of NAPM, and Subhash Katare, senior journalist and activist. If you're And I'm sorry I'm missing out on many names, but if anyone's interested, please come on the dais and address.
Adab. I am Taslim Rahmani from Muslim Medical Council of India. मैं पिछले 12-15 साल से असम को किसी न किसी सूरत में देख रहा हूँ और जा रहा हूँ आ रहा हूँ सब वहाँ कई ग्रुप्स के साथ आप सब लोग बैठे हैं जानते हैं प्राप्ता है। प्रोफेसर योगेंद्र यादव जी ने जो फरमाया उसी को इत्तफाक करते हुए मैं ये अर्ज करना चाहता हूँ। मैं अभी कल ही रात को असम से लौटा हूँ। मुझे महसूस हो रहा है NRC का मसला, इलीगल माइग्रेशन या लीगल माइग्रेशन व्हाटएवर, ये सब कुछ सिर्फ आसाम में NRC कोई नेशनल रजिस्टर्ड सिटीजन्स का पूरे मुल्क में कहीं नहीं है और माइग्रेशन पूरे मुल्क में हुआ है कहीं ना कहीं किसी न किसी सूरत में। यहाँ नॉर्थ इंडिया में, दिल्ली में, यूपी में, बिहार में हम देखते हैं बड़ी तादाद में 47 में माइग्रेंट्स आए और उनके साथ कभी किसी ने ये मुतालबा नहीं किया कि NRC दिल्ली में भी एक NRC बनना चाहिए, यूपी में भी एक NRC बनना चाहिए। किसी भी कभी नहीं हुआ। माइग्रेशन पूरे मुल्क में हुआ है, इंटरनल माइग्रेशन भी हुआ है, एक्सटर्नल माइग्रेशन भी हुआ है, दोनों किस्म का माइग्रेशन अभी तक भी हो रहा है। लेकिन इस माइग्रेशन को लेके इशू कभी इस तरीके का रेस नहीं हुआ। ये मुझे याद है एक मरतबा अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी लाल कृष्ण अडवाणी जी ने पार्लियामेंट में कहा था कि मेरी जिंदगी में जो बेहतरीन मूवमेंट मैंने कभी कोई देखा है अपनी पूरी लाइफ में तो वो असम में आंसू का मूवमेंट है। और मुझे हैरत हुई थी कि अडवाणी जैसे सीजन्ड पॉलिटिशियंस को आंसू का वो मूवमेंट बेहतरीन मूवमेंट लग रहा है जो वहां पर तेल की पाइपलाइंस उड़ाता है, जो वहां पर बॉम्बार्डमेंट करता है और जो वहां पर नफरत पैदा कर रहा है। यकीनी तौर पर ये एक सियासी इशू है जो वहां की डेमोग्राफी को चेंज कर रहा है। और जाहिर है कि असम एक बॉर्डरिंग स्टेट है, 7 सिस्टर्स हमारे स्ट्रेटेजिकली कितना इंपॉर्टेंट है इस देश के लिए, इसको कंसीडर करना चाहिए जब हम NRC की बात करते हैं या वहां पर जो हम इलीगल माइग्रेशन की बात करते हैं। हमको जहन में रखना चाहिए कि चिकन नेक से लेके अरुणाचल तक कितनी सेंसिटिविटी इन्वॉल्व है उस एरिया में। हम जब असम की बात करते हैं तो शायद वो सेंसिटिविटीज हमारे जहनों से निकल जाती हैं। आज जब मैं कल आसाम से लौट कर आया हूं तो मुझे बहुत ही खौफ के साथ, और मैं लफ्ज़ खौफ को अंडरलाइन करना चाहता हूँ, बहुत ही खौफ के साथ ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि अगले NRC बनवाने 31 दिसंबर की डेट है, पहले भी डेट्स आएंगे और 31 दिसंबर की भी डेट है। मुझे इस बात का 90% यकीन है कि 31 दिसंबर तक NRC बनने नहीं जा रहा। जिस अंदाज से कोऑर्डिनेटर वहां बिहेव कर रहे हैं और सुप्रीम कोर्ट में झूठ बोला जा रहा है बार बार, 31 दिसंबर तक तो कम से कम नहीं बन रहा। लेकिन मुझे डर यह है कि 2018 पूरे असम के लिए खतरनाक, पूरे असम के लिए, किसी हिंदू किसी मुसलमान के लिए नहीं। 1 करोड़ मुसलमानों का इशू नहीं है, 3.25 करोड़ असमीज का इशू है। और न सिर्फ ये असम के लिए खतरनाक होने जा रहा है बल्कि आपने बंगाल की बात की है, बंगाल में डेमोग्राफिक चेंज की बात की है, असम से उसी बंगाल में और उसी बंगाल से मिले हुए बिहार के हिमाचल में और फिर उसकी बुनियाद पर पूरे मुल्क में उस कल्चरल और पॉलिटिकल और नेशनल डाइवर्सिटी के नाम पर जिसका आपने जिक्र किया है, असम को नुक्ता आगाज बिगनिंग पॉइंट बनाकर इस देश में आग लगने जा रही है और असम उसका नुक्ता आगाज। अगर आप इसको सोच सकते हैं, अगर आप इसको रोक सकते हैं, अगर आप रेडिकल, पहली बार ये ड्रामा के मुंह से सुनी है, रेडिकल सेकुलरिस्ट का कोई मुकाबला किया जा सकता है और अगर इस मुल्क के ट्रू सेकुलरिस्ट इकट्ठा कर होके कहीं अगर इस पूरे हाल को रोक सकते हैं जिसमें अब सिर्फ 1.5 या 2 साल का वक्फा बाकी रह गया है, तो मैं आप लोगों का बड़ा एहसानमंद होगा, शुक्रगुजार होगा। इसको रोकने में हम जैसे लोगों का खून अगर आपको चाहिए तो इस मुल्क को बचाने के लिए और असम को बचाने के लिए हम हाजिर हैं।
Now, I invite Comrade Impasse, MP and member of CPIM.
Good afternoon. I think I will not really speak, just one point of clarification. Comrade Sitaram has already articulated our position on this whole question. But I think on the specifics of this ethnic situation and population movements, we need to be a little more careful, because I don't think that there is a major demographic change in terms of religious denomination in Bengal. In fact, that is what we are fighting. The census data and all that actually is not suggesting that there is any drastic change in the demography of Bengal in terms of religious denomination. I think these are very difficult times, these are very sensitive times, so we need to be very careful and circumspect before making any broad statement. Thank you.
Professor Purvanand.
शुक्रिया प्रोफेसर हिरेन गोहाई, प्रोफेसर बरुआ, योगेन जी, मित्रों और साथियों। प्रोफेसर हिरेन गोहाई ने जो पोजीशन पेपर या अपनी बात रखी यहाँ, मैं उससे पूरी तरह से इत्तेफाक जाहिर करता हूँ, सहमति व्यक्त करता हूँ। दरअसल योगेंद्र जी ने जो कहा उससे भी मैं सहमति जाहिर करता हूँ कि यह मामला भारत के विचार का है। लेकिन मैं यह भी कहना चाहता हूँ योगेंद्र जी से विनम्रतापूर्वक असहमति जाहिर करते हुए कि एक बार जब आप किसी क्षेत्र की किसी भी जातीय असुरक्षा को जायज ठहराने लगेंगे तो वह जातीय असुरक्षा आगे चलकर दूसरी शक्ल लेगी ही। वह आपके हाथ में नहीं है कि वह किस तरफ जाए। और जो ऑल असम स्टूडेंट यूनियन के मूवमेंट को लेकर आशंकाएं जाहिर कर रहे थे, उनकी आशंकाएं आज सही साबित होती हुई दिखाई पड़ रही हैं। इसके लिए आशंका जाहिर करने वालों को ही जिम्मेदार ठहरा देना एक बहुत अजीब सी बात है। भारत या दुनिया का कोई भी देश दरअसल आवाजाही से बनने वाला देश होना चाहिए। किसी भी हिस्से में मुल्क के, बल्कि दुनिया के किसी भी हिस्से में किसी भी भाषा बोलने वाले, किसी भी धर्म का पालन करने वाले, किसी भी विश्वास का पालन करने वाले को जाने और आने में इत्मीनान महसूस करना चाहिए और उससे दूसरों को डरने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है। इसकी ट्रेनिंग हमें लगातार अपने व्यवहार में देनी चाहिए, वरना एक जगह या असुरक्षा और एक बेचैनी जाति के नाम पर हो सकती है, भाषा के नाम पर हो सकती है, और अगर उसे आप जायज ठहराएंगे तो दूसरी जगह वह धर्म के नाम पर हो सकती है और उसे नाजायज ठहराने का फिर हमारे पास कोई तरीका नहीं। ये हिंदू कह सकते हैं कि हमारे अगल बगल मुसलमानों की तादाद बढ़ रही है और आप तब उन्हें कहेंगे आपके राज्य में नहीं बढ़ रही है, वो कहेंगे मेरे जिले में बढ़ रही है, वो कहेंगे मेरे गांव के पास बढ़ रही है और इसलिए मेरी असुरक्षा जायज है। मैं सिर्फ यह कह रहा हूं कि इन 70 सालों में अगर हमें अपनी राष्ट्रीयता को अलग ढंग से परिभाषित करना था, जिसको गांधी ने परिभाषित किया और जिसको नेहरू ने डिफेंड करने की कोशिश की और बाकी लोगों ने भी, जिन्हें दुर्भाग्य से अब रैडिकल सेक्युलर कहा जाता है। मुझे नहीं लगता कि इस देश में रैडिकल सेक्युलर, लिबरल सेक्युलर, इसके पहले जैसे हम सेक्युलर के आगे विशेषण